In a world where voices breathe life into pages, welcome to Sparrow's Realm. The story begins. The smell of earthy medicine and wild pine filled the air. The sound of far-off bells carrying through an old and mysterious world. She blinked, unsure. Her fingers were small, pale. The silk sheets under her hands seemed impossibly soft, and the delicate curve of a family crest glowed on the cherrywood bed frame. With a gasp, her heart beat at a rate not quite hers. "Lin Xiaoya, are you awake?" A cold voice pierced through the fog. A tall young man unadorned save for silver and black garments at the doorway stepped forward. His hair long and swept back from his face, eyes as dark as midnight and equally merciless. Power seemed to emanate from him. A mantle unaccustomed to grace. He advanced, putting a bowl of plain porridge on the bedside table. Recognizing her bewilderment, his lips compressed into a tight line. "Eat," he barked, then added, almost as if an afterthought, "You need your strength. Meeting later." As he turned his back, a tidal wave of memory, disjointed, improbably detailed, smashed into her awareness. Lin Xiaoya, her brother. Sect leader. The bad guy in every story. Ruthless genius destined for destruction. Lin Xiaoya. Once an every woman in Shanghai, now reimagined as the bad guy's little sister. A figure whose very existence had served only to heighten the emotional stakes before vanishing into tragedy. Was she actually in a Xianxia novel? Her brain reeled with questions. She recalled plot developments, character background, the destiny of the world. Lin Xiaoya would fall, brought low by the hero's light in the end arc. His family, collateral damage. But here, spoon shaking between her fingers, Lin Xiaoya could only wonder. Is this it? Am I just a prop for another story? A name to be forgotten? She looked at Lin Xiaoya, who had moved to the window, mesmerized by the sunrise bathing the sect's towers and courtyards in gold. His shoulders, tense with weariness, were weary from the effort of never relaxing. In the silence she sensed solitude beneath his imposing demeanor. A strand that bridged him to her former world. She asked hesitantly, "Brother, may I ask something?" He did not reply, but the flash of attention encouraged her to go on. "Is there any coffee here?" His face transitioned from worry to confusion, before freezing over. "Coffee? This is the Martial Cloud Sect. We practice cultivating qi, not drinks." Lin Xiaoya was about to laugh. The ridiculousness of wanting a caffeine fix in a world controlled by spiritual energy struck her like a gust of morning breeze. When Lin Xiaoya departed, morning routine started. Stewards arrived, bowed and greeted. Xiaoya echoed the manners, head racing at the recollection of office life. Here, protocol and silence took the place of email exchanges and elevator small talk. She sampled porridge, a tasteless comfort, a reminder that even in worlds of fantasy, tasteless breakfasts persisted. As she recovered, she paced about the room. Scrolls on the shelves, each one of them detailing technique and cultivation, but she caught her eye on a dusty, forgotten volume in the corner. East Garden Recipes. Her heart skipped a beat. Maybe food was her path forward, a lifeline to her lost self. Lin Xiaoya came back at noon, with a few stone-faced elders in tow. They spoke of sex strife and strategy, words low and laced. Xiaoya remained in the shadows, drinking every word in. "Lin Xiaoya," one of the elders spoke, low and grave, "your sister will have to start cultivation soon. She is of your blood, duty cannot be shirked." Lin Xiaoya nodded, looking at Lin Xiaoya as if he were seeing her for the first time. But Lin Xiaoya, battered by the unrelenting speed and currents of competition, felt an emptiness within. She wondered how, in her previous existence, she avoided burnout with little pleasures, a warm cup, a peaceful café, a momentary respite from ambition. That evening dinner was a grand affair. Jade platters, celestial soup, and distant thunder. Xiaoya sat quietly beside her brother, whose attention was locked not on food, but on looming responsibility. In a rare moment of courage, Lin Xiaoya looked up. She saw in Lin Xiaoya's gaze the same exhaustion her own reflection once shared in Shanghai's dark winter windows. She reached for her chopsticks, paused, and out it came. "I wish to open a café." Silence paralyzed the table. Conversation ceased, utensils clattered. Lin Xiaoya gazed, aghast. Elders looked at each other with bewildered faces. Lost her mind? Xiaoya didn't shrink away. Instead, she continued, words growing steadier. Not a tea house for power, or a hall for gathering disciples. A real cafe. For spirit lattes, sweet pastries, comfort and warmth. Where people can rest, not fight. Where everyone, she glanced at her brother, can be human. For a moment, no one was brave enough to speak. The inner circle of the sect was accustomed to declarations of martial intent, not sweet fantasies of slivers of cake and serenity. Lin Xiaoya's face relaxed infinitesimally, then set hard once more, but he turned away with a tiny, inexplicable smile. Wind whispered through the garden that evening. Xiaoya stayed in her room, her entire frame shaking. Had she just socially killed herself in front of the most influential sect leaders? Perhaps. But the thought burned within her. A refusal to act according to script, to be nothing more than a tragic catalyst for another person's redemption. She opened the East Garden recipes and read, tracing with her fingers faded ink. Tomorrow her scheme would start. She would request a corner of the sect to begin her café, no matter how ridiculous. If destiny demanded she have a small part in a world obsessed with power, she would play that role in color, in comfort, in humanity. A small act of defiance, 1 cup of coffee, 1 warm smile at a time. The moon rose high, silver-washed across tiles and pine. Lin Xiaoya lay awake, heart flickering between terror and hope. She didn't know how her request would be received, whether her brother would support or resist, whether the world would change or laugh her off. But for the first time in a long while she felt alive. Not as a tool or a faceless name in a novel, but as someone with a story, a purpose, a dream. And soon, somewhere in the heart of the Martial Cloud Sect, a quiet cafe would welcome its first customer. Morning light streamed through the paper-thin windows of the Lin household, casting gentle patterns on the wooden floor. Lin Xiaoya cross-legged on her bed, her mind still reeling from last night's daring statement. She had claimed her dream of having a cafe in front of the sect's elders, and lived. Barely. But now another voice resonated in her mind. Harmony system binding complete. Xiaoya stilled. A robotic, sexless voice, soothing and steady, spoke to her mind. Greetings, user Lin Xiaoya. Primary goal: foster peace, emotional connection and family warmth. Secondary goal: create refuge for the weary. Reward mechanism: emotional healing points, AHP. She blinked. A system. Affirmative. This is the Harmony system, created to bring order to worlds tainted with ceaseless war. You were selected as its host because of your natural compassion and abhorrence of violent ascension. Xiaoya sighed. Naturally. In a world where cultivation systems ran on blood, strength and retribution, she received the one that rewarded benevolence. First quest assigned: brew a cup of spirit coffee for Lin Xiaoya without triggering hostility. Reward 50 HP, unlock calm brew recipe. She groaned. Without triggering hostility? He's the devil prince. One wrong move and I'll be turned into a spirit herb. But the idea took root. If she could make her brother, cold, feared and emotionally sealed, accept a simple cup of coffee, maybe her dream wasn't so impossible. She spent the morning procuring ingredients. The East Garden Recipes book had spoken of spirit beans cultivated under moonlight, with soothing qi. She discovered a small pouch in the kitchen storeroom, still dusty but intact. Trembling hands carefully ground the beans in a stone mortar, then carefully heated water with a drop of lotus essence added. She made her way around to the training grounds at dusk, where Lin Xiaoya stood alone, sword in hand, executing forms that cut the air like thunder. Sweat beaded on his forehead, his aura fluctuating with fatigue. She paused. One slip and she'd be a casualty. Brother, she called softly. He pivoted, eyes alert. What is it? She extended the cup. I prepared this. For you. He looked at it as if it would blow up in his face. Coffee? Yes. Spirit imbued. It quenches fatigue. I thought you could use it. There was a strained silence. The wind died. Xiaoya steeled herself for denial. Then hesitantly Lin Xiaoya leaned back and sheathed his sword. He accepted the cup, breathed over it, and after an interminable moment consumed it. Xiaoya strained to hold her breath. He said nothing. But his shoulders unclenched. Just a little. And for the first time tension fled from his jaw. Then barely perceptibly, the corner of his mouth twitched. Was that a smile? Quest complete, the system proclaimed. 50 HP granted. Calm brew recipe unlocked. Emotional resonance level 1. Relief poured through her. She hadn't merely survived, she'd improved. The next day, she went back to the storeroom, now with the new recipe in hand. Calm brew needed honey from spirit bees, a dash of silverleaf powder, and a whisper of thanks while brewing. She went through each step by rote, heart aglow. When she offered the new drink to Lin Xiaoya that evening, he didn't even question it. He took it, nodded, and sat at the small table she'd placed outside her room. You're serious about this cafe? He said, sipping. I am, she replied. Why not? The world's full of people who fight until they break. Maybe someone should offer them a place to rest. He looked at her, really looked for the first time. You're not like the others. Good, she said with a smile. I'd hate to be predictable. Over the next few days, Xiaoya began sketching plans. She found a small, abandoned tea house at the edge of the sect's outer courtyard. Cracked tiles, peeling paint, but with a view of the valley below. Perfect. She presented her request to the sect elders. A café? Snere del dirmo. To what end? We already have tea ceremonies and halls for spirits. We don't require pastry. But we lack a space where cultivators can just be. Xiaoya pressed. No chitlis, no hunks, no wars. Just comfort. And perhaps a well-brewed coffee. The elders looked at one another. Some smiled. Others furrowed their brows. Lin Xiaoya, who had been quiet, spoke for the first time. Give her the space. Everyone looked at him. Sheldon't hurt the sect. Let her attempt it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But if it brings peace to even one person, isn't that worth it? The room went silent. And then grudgingly, the elders consented. That evening, Xiaoya stood in the vacant tea house, the dust kicking up in the moonlight. She hung her first poster on the door. The Quiet Bean opening soon. New quest assigned. Ready the café for opening. Reward, tranquility table. Diminishes spiritual exhaustion in everyone who sits at it. She smiled. It wasn't a sword. It wasn't a cultivation guide. But this little world, this fantasy belonged to her. And if peace could be trained like strength, then she would be its first master. Telephone polis bite starting tomorrow. Return in response to. The wind whistled down the broken tiles of the ancient tea house as Lin Xiaoya brushed dust off the floorboards. The Quiet Bean sign creaked above the entrance, its newly applied paint glossy. She had worked for 3 days, cleaning, patching, and arranging. Her fingers chapped, her lower back sore, but her heart content. She had done it. The room was cramped, but hers. Wooden tables, mismatched chairs, a counter constructed from spirit wood scavenged from the demolition site. At the center sat the tranquility table, a gift from the harmony system. Its surface carved with glowing runes that pulsed softly, soothing anyone who sat in its presence. Now all it needed was patrons, but the sect was not convinced. Disciples walked by mouthing, "A café? In a cultivation sect? What sort of weak nonsense is this?" Even the kitchen workers refused to provide ingredients, describing her vision as a waste of spirit herbs. Xiaoya did not care. She steeped her first pot of calm brew and left it out on the counter waiting. At dusk, no one appeared. She let out a deep breath, gazing at the vacated room. Perhaps she had erred. Perhaps tranquility wasn't what this world desired. Then the door creaked. A young woman entered, her robes torn at the sleeve, her aura trembling like a dying flame. Her face was sharp, proud. Xiaoya knew her at once. Su Qinglan, the so-called Heaven's Chosen, hero of the original novel, renowned for her perfect cultivation and frosty determination. But now she was broken. Xiaoya rose. "Welcome. Please sit." Su Qinglan hesitated, then sat down in a chair, right at the tranquility table. She didn't say a word, just closed her eyes, as if the world had finally collapsed on top of her. Xiaoya didn't ask any questions. She poured a cup of calm brew, sprinkled a warm moonlight bun from her recipe book, and placed it in front of her. "On the house," she murmured. Su Qinglan's eyes snapped open, suspicious. "Why?" "Because everyone requires a break," Xiaoya said. "Even heroes." A flash of feeling crossed Su Qinglan's face, something raw and unguarded. She bit into the pastry. Then again. Her shoulders drooped. "I lost," she breathed. "To the Northern Sect's champion. For the first time in a decade." Xiaoya nodded. And I don't know who I am when I'm not winning." Silence fell. Xiaoya sat across from her, not as a servant, not as the villain's sister, but as a friend. "You don't have to be perfect," Xiaoya said. "You just have to be you." Su Qinglan gazed up at her, eyes shining. "No one's ever said that to me." She released a tremulous breath, her grip tightening on the teacup. "My whole life I've been told I'm the chosen one, that I have to be perfect, that every move, every breath, has to contribute to the greater good. And when I lost, I didn't just lose a match. I lost everything that I was supposed to be." Xiaoya didn't cut in. She just filled her another cup, the steam rising between them like a soft vow. "I trained until my hands bled," Su Qinglan went on, her voice little more than a whisper. "I cut myself off from everyone. Friends, family. I thought feelings were weakness. But now, I don't even know how to feel without shattering." She let a tear roll down her cheek. She didn't brush it away. Xiaoya leaned forward. "Perhaps feeling is the strength. Not the lack of pain but the courage to confront it. You don't have to bear the world alone. Not here." Su Qinglan looked at her, seeking mockery for pity. But there was none, only warmth constant and true. And for the first time in years she allowed herself to let go. Emotional resonance level up. The system rang out. New recipe unlocked. Soothing moonlight bun. Alleviates emotional exhaustion and revives inner harmony. Xiaoya smiled. Better. The next morning Su Qinglan came back. This time not as a client but with a proposition. Can I work here? Xiaoya blinked. You? Heaven's chosen? As a barista. Su Qinglan's cheeks colored. I don't know what else to do. The sect wants me to train harder, fight again. But I'm exhausted. And this feels like the only place where I can breathe. Xiaoya got up, walked around the counter, and put a hand on her shoulder. Then welcome to the Quiet Bean. Uniform starts tomorrow. In the days that followed, Su Qinglan mastered brewing coffee, kneading dough, and smiling while serving. At first, she was rigid, starchy. Would you like sugar, cultivator? But gradually she loosened up. She giggled at Xiaoya's attempts at humor. She even playfully teased Lin Xiaoya when he dropped by, addressing him as Uncle Grumpy. And something else did Xiaoya notice. Whenever Su Qinglan smiled, the atmosphere at the café became less heavy. Then one evening, a group of rowdy disciples from the Martial Cloud Sect stormed in, swords at their sides. We heard this place serves weakness, sneered their leader. Let's see how long it lasts. Xiaoya stepped forward calm. This is a no-fighting zone. Weapons go by the door. The leader laughed. Or what? You'll serve me a cupcake. Before he could draw his blade, Su Qinglan stood, her aura flaring, her eyes sharp. Want to fight? She asked, voice icy. Okay. But not here. Never in this building. If you dishonor this café, you dishonor me. The disciple stood stock still. He'd heard of her rep. He gave way. When they walked away, Xiaoya turned to Su Qinglan. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to, she replied. This place. It's the first thing I've ever fought for, not against. Later that night, when moonlight poured onto the floor, Xiaoya turned on a little lantern in the back of the counter. The first customer. The first employee. The first hard-won win. She opened her notebook and wrote, Day 7. The Quiet Bean is no longer a fantasy. It's a refuge. And if one hero can find peace here, maybe the entire world can. Outside, the wind stilled. Somewhere in the distance, Lin Xiaoya stood watching the café's warm glow. A rare, quiet smile on his lips. After the encounter with the raucous Martial Cloud Sect disciples, a fragile calm settled over the Quiet Bean. Su Qinglan had impressed Xiaoya with her poise and subtle commitment, but neither woman took the respite for granted. With the gravity of the café's first real confrontation out of their system, a new rhythm set in. Mornings dawned with warm light streaming through the windows, the aroma of toasted spirit beans and freshly baked buns blending on the air, and the sound of quiet shuffle of disciples, some fearless, some cautious, pushing the limits of this new haven. With each spilled cup and served bun, Xiaoya saw whisper of the café spread like light on rock through the sect. Disciples who had mocked her endeavor now came in pairs and triplets, rolled scrolls and eyes red-rimmed. Even those who would not sit peered in, pride overcome by curiosity. Some started leaving discreetly folded papers with their payment, a poem, a thank you, or the most basic appeal. Can I return tomorrow? Su Qinglan, though still clumsy behind the counter, became invaluable in short order. She took orders with strained elegance, memorized regulars' idiosyncrasies, and even once diverted a cranky elder's ire by reciting on-minded scroll verses while slipping extra honey into his tea. It was on a cold morning when frost rimmed the windows that Xiaoya saw Su Qinglan lingering at the biggest table, fingers tracing the tranquility table's glowing runes. Do you miss the old days? Xiaoya asked softly, wiping a mug dry on the counter. Before all of this? Su Qinglan thought, her face distorted in the shine on the polished wood. I miss not being in terror all the time. I used to think that I had it all planned out the way the winds. Now, even serenity sounds like something that I could shatter just by breathing too hard. Xiaoya set the mug aside and came to sit with her, speaking truthfully. I believe some of growing is understanding peace is delicate, but that doesn't make it any less valuable. Su Qinglan smiled, small but real. That's easy for someone who never lost to say. I lost my world, Xiaoya said. But perhaps I gained another. Their time was broken by the slam of the door and a fidgety junior disciple of the outer sect, arms full of baskets full of wild herbs and a precious bottle of sunset flower honey. He bowed low. My mother overheard your café eases the heart. She said, if you could accept these, she'd appreciate it. My little sister won't sleep. She weeps at night, terrible dreams. There is nowhere else for her, but... He shifted uncomfortably, his eyes flicking toward the floor. Moved, Xiaoya smiled. I'll make something special. Bring her tomorrow. As evening wore on, Xiaoya made a soothing tea from the honey, a cup she named Night Cloud Comfort. That evening, she dreamed about a crowded room and laughter rather than worried whispers. The next afternoon, the junior disciple came back, this time accompanied by his little sister, a pale girl with ink-dark shadows under her eyes. Xiaoya knelt beside her, holding out the warm cup. No pressure. Just take one sip. The girl did, her shaking hands. Time ticked by. Then she breathed out, her shoulders dropping as if weight had been brushed aside in a gentle manner. The harmony system rang. Good deed registered. Sleepless spirit comforted. Reward. Recipe midnight lotus milk. Grants peaceful sleep. In the evening there was a buzz in the café. Xiaoya knew that more faces hung around longer, their voices quiet but sincere. A group of 3 disciples quietly played cards in the corner. 2 traveling alchemists had a heated debate on pastries versus pills, though both were firm that the Quiet Beans mooncakes were superior to the Jade Pavilion's elixirs for flavor. Progress was made despite this, though fierce opposition simmered beyond the walls of the café. In the council meeting that evening, Elder Mo expressed his displeasure. Sect resources spent on sentiment, he insisted, thumping his staff. We cannot be soft. Already other sects are doubting our determination. Lin Xiaoya, standing at the back, looked at him straight. If more cultivators kept their hate and competition at that café's door, we might not require so many healing resources. He left before tempers could heat up more. Passing by the Quiet Bean, he hesitated. Xiaoya saw his silhouette in the doorway, the familiar quiet shape that weighed heavier on certain nights. She filled a cup for him with no words. They sat silently together, each off in his own thoughts. Your café, Xiaoya. Lin Xiaoya started low voice. It's altering the atmosphere here. Not everyone will appreciate it. Some may struggle more to maintain things the way they were. She nodded, putting down her cup. Peace is easy to destroy and difficult to fight for. But I believe I'm ready for that. Lin Xiaoya's lips curled at the corner, barely audible. If anyone harms this place, they'll answer to me. The next morning, Xiaoya was greeted by an anonymous note taped to the café door. If the Quiet Bean remains open, the sect is undone. Shut down or be dealt with. A shiver of fear ran through her. For the first time since she'd entered this world, Xiaoya felt utterly exposed, not for herself, but for this small refuge she'd created and for those who had already grown dependent on it. She stood in the vacant dawn light, rereading the thread again and again. Her hands trembled, but her determination firmed. Su Qinglan boiled water and stealthily assembled pastries on a tray indoors. She looked at Xiaoya and upon seeing her face merely nodded. They would never give up. Not this day, not ever. No threat, no obstinate elder. No old wound would erase the peace gained through plain kindness and guts. This was her path now, Xiaoya realized. And she would walk it, no matter how many storms circled outside her quiet walls. The silence preceding dawn was always Xiaoya's favorite. The world seemed to hold itself on one breath, as though wondering if it would introduce hope or challenge with the next day. This morning she opened the Quiet Bean and entered the pre-dawn cool, arms full of new foods and fresh scrolls brimming with recipe inspiration. Each step was heavy with intent. Their triumph last week, the thank yous, the child's quiet slumber, the faithful faces in spite of intimidation, had felt like sunlight breaking through morning fog. But she sensed a new doubt percolating through disciples, a trepidation from more and more watching eyes observing the café from darkened recesses or overhead walkways. Within, the morning started calmly. Su Qinglan experimented with baking, sprinkling flour over her nose and smiling at Xiaoya, who shammed not to see her. An aged couple, 2 outer sect alchemists, sat down for their regular bowls of rice porridge and green tea, smiling in approval over the soft music and sunlight upon the floorboards. Children read in hushed tones with each other in the corner, laughter whispering, a touch of normality unusual between these walls. Midday, however, the café became unbearably strained. The word of the threat stuck to the door had spread, and fewer customers lingered. Some of those who did venture in looked over their shoulders and whispered before daring a seat. It was in this uneasy atmosphere that Lin Xiaoya appeared, not on the verge of closing time as he normally did, but at the tail end of the lunch hour. The quiet that followed him was unlike today, weightier and more electric. Xiaoya felt it at once. Even Su Qinglan stepped behind the counter. He didn't order anything, just stood at the window, his face blurring with the bright haze outside, eyes focused on the mountains. In a few minutes, Xiaoya crept up beside him and put a mug of calm brew on the sill. He didn't say thanks, only gazed, voice rough. It's more difficult now. The elders met this morning. They accuse you of the commotion. Xiaoya's heart constricted. Do they have evidence I'm the reason or just an easy scapegoat? Proof is not required, only a target, he said, the faintest bitterness in his words. They whisper that your peace breeds weakness. She kept her tone steady, hands around her mug for courage. I don't believe peace is weakness, big brother. Only those afraid to lose control say that. It takes more strength to care for people than to hurt them. Lin Xiaoya gazed at her then, his eyes tinged with exhaustion and something almost like longing. The smile of the devil prince seemed to weigh him down today. He spoke in an uncommon hesitation. I sometimes envy you, Xiaoya. I used to believe that feeling nothing was my greatest defense. He adjusted, a big silence dragging on as the sun passed behind a cloud. It was until you came back. His words dropped now, quieter than ever before. I never asked for this warlord's curse. Others view a monster when they see me, but I was forged into one for their sake. When you enter a room, all the old ghosts shut up. Xiaoya blinked back at sudden tears. That's because I view you as my brother before I view you as a responsibility someone placed on your shoulders. He dropped his head, his voice cracking softly. I recall before it all, when we were young, before the elders realized I had talent, we'd slip away and steal steamed buns from the kitchens. You were the one who always had the courage, Xiaoya. It's funny, but those are the things that sustained me, not titles or power. She moved over and wrapped her hand around his, heat pumping between them. You're no longer alone. Perhaps you never were at all. It's time you let yourself come back to who you used to be, even just here for the meantime. Quiet grew into a warm stillness between them. Outside, the wind grew stronger. Weeping gulls flew about the roof, their cries far away and feeble. Then in perfect timing, the harmony systems chimed in softly in Xiaoya's mind. Emotional resonance enhanced. Shared calm triggered. Emotional steadiness spread to those nearby. Lin Xiaoya shivered, shoulders finally unwinding. He waited for a bit, then took a slow drink of coffee, and for the first time in Xiaoya's memory, he didn't gulp it down to rush off to his duty. He drank it with purpose, nearly savoring the sensation. As the afternoon wore on, they arrived, more than before, some hoping for nothing more than a fleeting reprieve from fear, some quietly defending the quiet being just by entering its doors in plain daylight. The quiet defiance of arriving was its own form of courage. At sunset, a startled Xiaoya discovered on her counter an unsigned message penned in a familiar biting hand. Anyone who dares harm the quiet being. Answer to me, Lin Xiaoya. She took the note from Su Qinglan, whose eyes danced as she breathed softly. He's chosen his side. In the evening light with lanterns burning, and laughter waves rising in soft waves, something strong was felt in the air. No longer fear, but a frail hope. The ties established within those walls had grown more unyielding than the dangers beyond them. Before he closed, Lin Xiaoya stood in the doorway, looking over the café for one last time. Gracias, hermana pequeña, por recordarme lo que es importante. Xiaoya dipped her head, her heart warming. Anytime, hermano mayor. While the world outside still hung suspended between tranquility and brutality, within the quiet being, the promise of home was coming to pass. The day after Lin Xiaoya's subdued confession, the quiet being opened beneath a wan sun. Xiaoya swept the porch, her mind warm with hope. The café had weathered threats, suspicion, and silence. And now it stood, not as a revolution but as a discreet truth. Humans needed rest as much as they needed fortitude. Inside, Su Qinglan arranged fresh moonlight buns on a lacquered tray, her movements more confident than before. We're running low on spirit honey, she said. The alchemist's daughter brought more last night. She said her mother sleeps through the night now. Xiaoya smiled. Then we'll keep making more. The day went by gently. A young disciple arrived with a sprained wrist, looking for warmth rather than cure. Two old cultivators took tea and exchanged anecdotes about their youth. Tranquility table radiated softly, its peaceful aura spreading like dawn mist. Then the bell rang. A young man entered, tall, unruffled, his energy tightly in check. He sported the markings of the sect's highest disciple, Luofeng, the self-proclaimed Heaven's Blade, renowned for his perfect technique and unyielding fortitude. Xiaoya had heard of him in the original novel, but now up close, he did not look as much like a hero but rather as though he bore a mountain on his shoulders. He didn't sit, just stood, eyes scanning the room as if expecting judgment. Welcome, Xiaoya said, keeping her voice light. We have a new brew today, calm brew with silverleaf. Helps with focus. Luofeng nodded. I'll take it. Black. She poured, watching him. His hands trembled slightly as he took the cup. He didn't drink, just stared into the steam. After a long silence he said, They say this place makes cultivators weak. And are you weak? Xiaoya asked. He hesitated. I am tired. Su Qinglan held back, then laid down her cloth. Tired isn't weak. It's honesty. Luo Feng stared at her, shocked. Jure Su Qinglan. The heavens chosen. And you're Luo Feng, the perfect disciple, she said wryly. But even perfect blades need honing. And rest. He spat out a harsh, bitter laugh. I lost yesterday. To a third-rank cultivator. I froze in mid-form. My qi dissipated. The elders said I wasn't disciplined. Xiaoya sat across from him. Or perhaps you've been pushing too hard for too long. I must be strong, he muttered, voice strained. The sect relies on me. If I fail, who will guard them? Who guards you? Su Qinglan asked softly. Luo Feng winced. His mask cracked. No one. No time. No one to speak to. Xiaoya pushed a moonlight bun in front of him. Eat this. It is not magic. Only warmth. And concern. He ate a bite. Another. His shoulders fell. For the first time, the knot in his jaw relaxed. I don't know who I am without the title, he conceded. Without the expectations. You're Luo Feng, Xiaoya said. An individual. Not a tool. Not a legend. Just someone who gets to be tired. He gazed up at her, his eyes shining. And if I can't do it all? Then you don't, she replied. You let someone assist. That is not weakness. That is strength. He did not say anything. Only nodded slowly. That night, after the café had cleared out, Luo Feng remained. I'll return tomorrow. Xiaoya smiled. We'll hold a table for you. Outside, the wind bore whispers in the sect. Some whispered the hero had appeared in the café. Others whispered that he had disintegrated. But the reality was more straightforward. He discovered a space where he didn't need to be flawless. Harmony system notification. Emotional resonance level up. New recipe unlocked. Second wind smoothie. Restores mental clarity after spiritual exhaustion. As the lanterns flickered to life, Xiaoya stood at the door watching the stars. Su Qinglan joined her. We're changing things. We're not changing them, Xiaoya said. We're reminding them of what was always there. Inside, the tranquility table glowed. The quiet bean stood small, unassuming but unshakable. And somewhere in the dark, a hero slept peacefully for the first time in years. The aroma of roasting spirit beans wove its way through the air, warm and heavy, and Lin Xiaoya was somewhere else. She was home. Rain drummed against the window of a tiny Shanghai cafe, the one where she would go after late shifts. Lights were dimmed, music gentle. A barista passed her a latte, smiling. Bad day? Xiaoya, who was then only an office worker with weary eyes and sore shoulders, had agreed. You could say that. You really ought to come here more often, the barista told her. Everyone needs a place to breathe. She never returned. Not before the collapse, not before the headache, not before waking up in this world. But now standing behind the counter of the quiet bean. The memory came back like a whisper. She touched the wooden edge, fingers tracing the grain. This is my place to breathe. And maybe it can be theirs too. The bell rang, pulling her back. A group of disciples from the Martial Cloud Sect strode in, their cultivation auras flaring, swords still strapped to their backs. Their leader, Feng Lei, slammed his fist on the counter. This is a joke, he scorned. You think tea and pastries make cultivators powerful? Xiaoya didn't blink. Not power or weakness, just a place to breathe. Feng Lei snorted. People? We are warriors. We don't require comfort. We require power. Before he could continue, Luo Feng interceded, unruffled. And how's that going for you? The room quieted. Feng Lei scowled. You're the so-called hero. What are you doing here? Resting, Luo Feng replied flatly. Because even heroes tire. Feng Lei sneered. Weakness is like poison. Xiaoya moved forward. Then let me give you an antidote. She ducked below the counter and produced a little sign, new paint. She tacked it up by the door. And no fighting Tuesdays. All weapons prohibited. Peace only. Silence. Feng Lei gaped. You're kidding. Dead serious, Xiaoya said. One day a week this place belongs to calm. No swords. No grudges. Just tea, talk and time. Feng Lei turned to his men. This is ridiculous. But one of them, a younger disciple with a scar across his brow, stepped forward. I'll stay. Feng Lei whirled. What? I lost my brother in the previous fight with the Azure Wind sect. The young man stated, low voice. I came to train harder, fight. But I don't know how to give up on the hatred. Xiaoya served him a cup of calm brew, extra honey. Then today you don't have to. He sat down. Gradually the others did too. That afternoon Xiaoya proposed a straightforward rule. No weapons, no honorifics, no sect names. Names. First names. Feng Lei initially refused, arms folded. But with the passage of the hours, watching his own disciple giggle over a moonlight bun, seeing Luo Feng and Su Qinglan quietly play a game of spirit cards, something in him changed. He said nothing. But he remained. When the evening arrived, Xiaoya offered him a cup. On the house. He accepted it. Consumed it. Nodded. No words. Yet the tension from his shoulders had dissipated. Harmony system notification. Quest complete. Establish peace zone. Reward, harmony bell. When rung, imposes a 10-minute truce in any space. The following Tuesday still more came. Disciples from competing sections. Even a few elders hooded and stoic in the rear. Xiaoya told the harmony bell at noon. The sound was gentle, nearly melodic, but the result instantaneous. Shoulders untensing, voices being lowered, the very air appearing to quiet. Two cultivators, Yin of the Azure Wind sect and Li of the Iron Ridge clan, occupied opposite corners of the room. Their animosity was the stuff of legend. A duel each full moon, bloodshed, vendettas deepened. They didn't talk. But they didn't unsheathe their swords. Xiaoya fetched them both new drinks and a platter of soothing moonlight buns. Say what you must. No attacks. No interruptions. Just speak. Yin drew a breath, his fingers clenched tight around the cup. During the last duel you employed shadow steps, our clan's forbidden method. I witnessed it. I believed you copied it. Li's eyes widened. I didn't steal it. I learned it from my uncle. He trained under Master Feng of the Azure Wind sect, before he was exiled for breaking the rules. Yin froze. Master Feng? He was my uncle. Li exhaled. Then it wasn't theft. It was inheritance. A long silence stretched between them. Yan's voice softened. I thought you were mocking us, disrespecting our ways. I thought you were accusing me of being without honor, Li said. I fought harder to show I wasn't. They regarded one another, not as enemies, but as men who had both acted out of duty, out of loyalty, out of love. Yin breathed slowly. All this while, we were defending the same thing. Li nodded. And arguing over a shadow. Another silence. Then slowly Yin leaned across the table. Not to hit. To extend his hand. Li hesitated, then took it. No words. No promises. Simply a silent understanding. They sat there for the remainder of the hour, sipping tea, talking softly. When they got up and left, they didn't walk apart. They walked side by side. That evening, Lin Xiaoya visited, as he always did. He sipped his coffee in silence, then said, You're changing things. I'm not trying to, Xiaoya said. I just want a place where people can be human. He looked at her, really looked. Maybe that's the most powerful thing of all. Outside, the moon rose, casting silver light over the café. The sign swung gently in the breeze. No fighting Tuesdays. A small rule. A silent uprising. And the start of something bigger. The mist at dawn crept over the Martial Cloud Sect's outer courtyard, and with it a new noise. Tinkling metal, the aroma of roasted beans, and the buzz of a crowded throng. Xiaoya emerged from the quiet bean, broom in hand, and stood still. Along the way, where a vacant lot had existed yesterday, now stood a shiny two-story pavilion of jade and red silk. A golden logo swung above the door. The crimson grind where power meets perfection. Her gut plummeted. She wasn't alone in it. Su Qinglan materialized at her elbow, folded arms. That didn't exist last night. No, Xiaoya said. It didn't. The crimson grind was filled by noon. Disciples swarmed its sleek counters, attracted to gaudy drinks with signs such as Blazing Chi Brew and Soulfire Latte, which were served in radiant cups that seemed to radiate spiritual power. The charismatic cultivator and owner, Master Jean, stood at the door, distributing free samples and proclaiming, Strength starts with energy. Weakness has no home here. Within the quiet bean, the atmosphere weighed down. Luo Feng showed up that night, his face inscrutable. They're claiming your café is outmoded. That actual cultivators require strength, not tranquility. Xiaoya stirred honey into a glass of calm brew. And what do you believe? He paused. I think. I don't wish to decide. She didn't fault him. The crimson grind wasn't any ordinary café. It was a declaration, a public defiance of everything the quiet bean represented. The day after that, fewer patrons showed up. Some murmured apologies. Others didn't show up at all. Even Lin Xiaoya hesitated at the entrance, his eyes flashing in the direction of the competition pavilion. They have cultivation enhancements in their beverages. I know, Xiaoya replied. But we have something they don't. What is it? Time to breathe. He glanced at her, then entered. Xiaoya waited alone that evening, gazing at the tranquility table. The harmony system was quiet. No quest, no reward. For the first time, she questioned whether goodness could exist by itself in a world that revered power. Then the bell rang. It was the young disciple with the scar, the one who had lingered on No Fighting Tuesday. He had a basket. I brought honey, he said. My sister's bees. She said. She likes the midnight lotus milk. Said it helped her sleep after the raid. Xiaoya smiled. Thank you. He hesitated. I didn't go to the other place. Felt loud. Here I can think. More the next day. The Southern Peaks alchemist. The Iron Ridge clan elder. Even Gruff Feng Lei stomped in and demanded a serenity bun. They don't silence themselves over there, he growled. Just clamor. Gossip flew. The crimson grind provided strength, but the quiet bean provided something more elusive, calm. On the 7th day, Master Jean himself showed up at the door, robes billowing, smile keen. Your strength is admirable, he told her. But tell me, how long can you survive when no one wants softness over might? Xiaoya looked him in the eye. Ask them. She moved aside, letting Master Jean see the café, full, warm, vibrant. Disciples sat in hushed discussion. Luo Feng perused a scroll. Su Qinglan left. Lin Xiaoya drank his coffee, his shoulders calm. Master Jin's smile stalled. He departed without further comment. That evening the harmony system rang out. Challenge overcome. Integrity under fire. Reward, heart of the bean. A sacred spirit plant that enhances emotional resonance in all who drink its brew. Xiaoya put it in a little pot on the windowsill. Outside, the lights of the crimson grind went out. Inside, the quiet bean shone with more light than ever before. Not because it had one, but because it never had to. The next morning the crimson grind had disappeared. The quiet bean woke to silence. No clinking metal. No swaggering announcements. Just the gentle whoosh of wine through the courtyard, and the comforting smell of spirit beans warming in the sun. Xiaoya walked out, carrying her broom, and gazed at the vacant lot. The jade pavilion had disappeared. Disappeared as if it had never been there. Only a slight burn mark was left on the stone, the shape of a broken cup. Inside, the café hummed with quiet energy. Disciples returned, some sheepish, others relieved. Feng Lei stomped in, dropped a pouch of rare mountain honey on the counter and grunted. Don't let anyone else build nonsense here. Xiaoya smiled. I'll try not to. But peace felt fragile. The harmony system had been silent since the victory. No quests. No rewards. Not even a chime. That night, when the lanterns came on, Xiaoya requested Lin Xiaoya and Su Qinglan to remain. Luo Feng stayed behind as well, feeling the gravity in her tone. They sat at the tranquility table, the heart of the bean softly aglow in its pot. I have something I need to share with you, Xiaoya started. Something I've kept secret since the day I opened this establishment. Lin Xiaoyan's eyes narrowed. You're not just a little sister who likes tea. She shook her head. I'm not from this world. Not this life. Silence. I died, she said quietly. In another time. Another version of this world. It was broken wars, famine, cultivators turned on each other. The sects fell. The skies burned. Su Qinglan leaned forward. You're saying you're from the future? No, Xiaoya said. I'm saying I'm from the end. She set the notebook down on the table. The pages glowed softly. There was a café. The last bean. I constructed it in the remains of the central sect. Not for domination. Not for conflict. Only peace. I was its guardian. Luo Feng knit his brows. And the system? It's real, she said. The harmony system. It provided me with recipes. Skills. A second chance. When I died it resurrected me, here younger in this body. To do it differently. To build peace before the fall. Lin Xiaoya looked at her. And the heart of the bean? The tranquility table. Everyone from the previous world, she said. Made real by memories. I thought I was just brewing coffee. But I was restoring something sacred. Su Qinglan stroked the radiant plant. And then the crimson grind, was it merely a competitor? Or something else? Xiaoya paused. I don't know. But its owner, Master Jean, told me as if he knew what exactly this place was. As if he dreaded it. Lin Xiaoyan's voice was husky. Or like he wanted to destroy it. A shiver fell over the room. Then the black feather, forgotten since the stranger's departure, floated from Xiaoya's pocket. It spun once, then flew into the mountains. A message coalesced in the steam above the tranquility table. Follow the feather. Remember the fall. or history will repeat. Xiaoya glanced at her brother, her friends. I can't do this alone. Lin Xiaoya rose. You never were. That evening she left a message on the counter. The quiet bean is closed for now. But peace isn't gone. Just searching. And when the first star broke through the sky, the five of them, Xiaoya, Lin Xiaoya, Su Qinglan, Luofeng, and Feng Lei, stepped out the gates of the sect. The wind bore a whisper, not from the system, not from memory, but from something older. Welcome back, Keeper. The mountain trail wound up into mist and silence. The black feather drifted on, a single glow against the misty dawn. The trip took longer than any of them had anticipated. Days dissolved into silver haze and whispering pines, the trail twisting through forgotten valleys where the air itself seemed to vibrate with memory. At night they camped under drifting stars, trading stories rather than plans, the glow of their small fire a tenuous guarantee against the cold. When the feather finally slowed to a gleam ahead, they all felt that they were proceeding not merely through space, but through the world's hidden past. Mist accumulated between rough cliffs. Wind moaned through pine and bamboo, bearing distant sounds of long-forgotten battles. There was a broken sword once, half buried along the path, blade vibrating with leftover chi. Feng Lei laid hand against it, face stern. Even peace comes from shattered steel, Xiaoya whispered, and they continued. The feather guided them along ravines and narrow gorges. Under twin moons they made small fires, the dancing flames gentle on tired faces. Su Qinglan made a thin broth while Luofeng sharpened his sword in quietness. Lin Xiaoya hovered at the rim of the clearing, looking at the horizon like a guard too frightened to sleep. One night, a storm swept down the hills and silences awakened among the trees. Traces of old bitterness, restless spirits attracted by the heart of the bean's faint beat. Xiaoya cradled the glowing pot in her hands and murmured phrases she had never learned. The ghosts faded into the rain, calmed by warmth more than repelled by power. When sunrise came on the third day, the feather lost its brightness and the mist parted to show a line of stone markers rising towards the clouds. In silence they trailed behind, hearts pounding with equal doses of fear and awe. Somewhere in front lay answers, and maybe the sound of the world she had lost once before. On the fourth morning they arrived. A half-entombed ruin stood amidst a high mountain clearing. A shattered sign clung to a splintered post, its letters worn away but still readable. The last bean. Xiaoya's breath was caught. It was her café. The one in her past life. The one that burned. She remembered her second life, not the contemporary life but one in this same world. She moved forward, fingertips tracing the cracked counter, the broken teacups, the tranquility table, now broken down its center, its runes fading. This is where it ended, she breathed. The final battle. The fall. Su Qinglan knelt, clearing dust from a blackened notebook. This is yours, isn't it? Xiaoya nodded. I wrote every recipe here. Every hope. Lin Xiaoya looked over the ruins. Someone didn't just destroy this place. They erased it. Luofeng grasped a shattered cup. And now it's beckoning you back. At sundown, Xiaoya kindled a small flame. She put the heart of the bean at the center, its light flashing with the rhythm of a heartbeat. She mouthed the words of her dream. Eclipse brew. Unlocks buried memories. Ingredients. Heart of the bean, shadow dew, and a tear for the lost. She gathered dew off the eaves of the ruins. Added a petal from the heart of the bean to the pot. Then, as the memory of her final death flooded over her, the flames, the cries, the stillness, she shed a single tear into the brew. The liquid glimmered black as night. She filled 5 cups. Drink, she instructed. And see. They did. And the mountain clearing melted away. They stood at the end of the old world. The skies turned red. Cultivators battled in the streets. The last bean alone remained, until the crimson grind came, not as a competing café, but as an army. Master Jean, dressed in black flame, shouted, Peace is weakness. Only power survives. Xiaoya battled. She employed all recipes, every skill. But she was alone. And then she perished. The vision disappeared. Silence. Feng Lei broke it. So we're fighting that? Xiaoya stood, eyes burning. No. We're stopping it before it begins. The harmony system finally spoke, its voice clear and strong. Final quest. Prevent the fall. Protect the first piece. Reward. A world that remembers kindness. That night, as they camped among the ruins, the black feather rose again. It pointed east. Toward the Martial Cloud Sect. Toward home. The return to the Martial Cloud Sect was not victorious. It was somber. Heavy. Xiaoya went ahead, the heart of the bean nestled in a silk-wrapped vessel, its light fluttering like a second pulse. Lin Xiaoya followed, moving quietly watchful, his presence a reassuring anchor. Su Qinglan's gaze swept over the familiar trails, now overlaid with apprehension. Luo Feng and Feng Lei brought up the rear, their normal competition set aside by common purpose. Both had witnessed the ruin. Both knew what lay ahead. The sect remained the same on the outside. Disciples practiced in the courtyards. Elders argued in the halls. But the air was thinner, electric with the unseen. And then, at the periphery of the central courtyard, where the crimson grind used to be, he came. Master Jin. Veiled in black flame, his face obscured, he stood before a recently discovered stone altar. Split, old, inscribed with the same signs as the tranquility table. Its center thrummed with a dark core, living off the resentful memory of the sect. You came back, he said, voice resonating like thunder in an empty cave. I wished you wouldn't. Xiaoya moved closer. You knew. You were there when it crashed. He nodded. I lived. Unlike you. I witness what occurs when weakness takes hold. When cultivators prefer tea to training, peace to power. The world burns. And so you attempted to bring down the quiet being, Su Qinglan said. To prevent it before it started. I attempted to protect, he growled. By making sure strength was in charge. By giving power to those who deserved it. But you let them feel. And feeling is dangerous. Lin Zhishuan's voice was icy. You don't get to decide what's dangerous. Master Jin's hand went up. The dark core blazed. Shadows coiled from the ground and became ghostly warriors. Ghosts of the dead distorted with fury. The fight started. Luo Feng attacked, sword burning with righteous rage. Feng Lei attacked, bellowing as he broke a shadow on a single hit. But with each one that fell, two took its place. This is not a battle of brawn, Xiaoya understood. This is a battle of memory. She faced Lin Zhishuan. You consumed the eclipse brew. You witnessed the fall. You recall. He met her gaze, eyes heavy with the burden of it. I do. Then have them witness it as well. She set the heart of the being in the courtyard center. The system said it would intensify emotional resonance. If anybody can broadcast that memory, it's you. On the edge of caution, Lin Zhishuan hesitated. And then he moved slowly forward. He laid his hand on the heart of the being, and shut his eyes. A burst of light flashed, not from the plant but from him. The air was held still. And then came the vision. Not in a cup, not in a spell, but through him. The whole courtyard witnessed it. The heavens turned red. Cities collapsed. Cultivators against each other. The last being stood alone in the devastation, until the army of the Crimson Grind arrived, commanded by a man in black fire. They torched it. They crushed it. And Xiaoya Tough Tiny fought to the last. They watched her die. They watched the world collapse. And they saw Lin Zhishuan, kneeling by her body, mouthing her name, the last to recall. The vision dissipated. Silence. Then a disciple dropped to his knees. I remember now. Another gasped. That could be us. More voices added. We choose peace. Master Jin reeled. No, this cannot happen. It is, Xiaoya said. And you know it. You were one of them. A survivor. You believed that you could destroy peace in order to save the world. But all you did was repeat the cycle. He dropped to his knees. I just wanted to protect. We all do, she said softly. But protection isn't control. It's care. The dark core flickered. The shadows wavered. And then from all sides of the sect, voices echoed. Not of fighting but of harmony. We remember. We opt for peace. The center broke apart. Master Jin glanced up, his eyes welling with tears. What do we do now? Xiaoya extended her hand. Now you heal. The harmony system rang sweet and pure. Final quest. Stop the fall. Save the first piece. Reward. A world that recalls kindness. With the break of dawn, the heart of the being shone brighter than ever. And in the silence that followed, something new took root. Not victory, but understanding. Seasons passed, and the Martial Cloud Sect was transformed. The center of darkness and resentment, broken by the common memory of Lin Zhishuan, never did recover. Its place was taken by the heart of the being, standing tall outside the window of the café among sprouting spirit flowers and soft laughter. The sect was more subdued but firm. Disciples slowed to converse, elders shared tea, and no courtyard bore the specter of competition for long. Xiaoya, once merely the villain's little sister or cryptic keeper, now lived each day among friends and loved ones who knew her history. When young aspirants inquired of her past, she answered truthfully. She was a second chance, a lesson learned from a world that had once burned, sent to foster peace within each cup and each conversation. Lin Zhishuan became the guardian he was intended to be, not as a disciplinarian, but as a champion of mercy. His quiet power was the foundation of the sect, and he spent long afternoons on the veranda with Xiaoya, recounting past lives and dreams for the future. Su Qinglan, always the leader, was closing the gap between vying clans, hosting festivals and joint training. Under her leadership, new practices began: serenity contests, oaths of kindness, and seasonal celebrations at the Quiet Bean. Luofeng and Fenglei, former foes, became legends in their own right. They were the subject of gossip of the sect, icons of the way that strength and gentleness could develop side by side. They both taught younger disciples the art of balance, never only battling, always recalling why they battled for. And Master Jin? He came back once, months afterward, his flame extinguished. He begged for forgiveness and was forgiven. Xiaoya served him spirit tea and extended friendship. Jin departed, vowing to recreate elsewhere. A new way for a soul discovering difference does not have to mean war. The harmony system remained silent at last. Not because it had finished, but because it was complete. Xiaoya required no guidance. Her legacy now was the lives she touched and the calm she brought. When spring bloomed across the courtyard, the café expanded by half. Children frolicked amidst the spirit blossoms. Even the grumpiest elders stopped by for a mug of midnight lotus milk and a pause. Every night, Xiaoya would close the café at sunset. She would stand before the warm heart of the bean, the soft thrum of memory in her bones, and softly promise herself in the world: peace isn't a prize. It's a practice. The cycle would not start again. The world would mend. And in each seed sown and each act of kindness shared, the Quiet Bean's legacy would endure. If you enjoyed the journey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more tales from Sparrow's Realm. Until next time, keep listening and let your imagination soar.